Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another installment of the Typography Basics series. So last week I introduced you to what type was and what the difference between type and lettering were, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the difference between typefaces and fonts, and also the different types of typefaces and fonts that we can use and how we can kind of use them in the best way and the effects that they give. So I'm giving you a bit of an introduction to more specifically fonts and typefaces today, whereas last week was just type in general. So to get started, we're going to talk about the difference between typefaces and fonts. Now these are quite often confused or used interchangeably. If you are a designer or you're wanting to be a typographer or anything like that, it is quite important to know the difference. A typeface is made up of different fonts. So a typeface might be something like Helvetica, but within Helvetica there are different fonts. So they might have a Roman font and a bold font and a light font and an extra light font, or any of those types of different weights or italics or anything like that. Those are fonts. And so those different fonts make up a typeface. So that's kind of the difference between them. And there's a good analogy, which is that it's kind of like songs on an album. So an album and its songs are both music and they're both by the same person and in the same style, but each song is individual and those songs make up the album. The typeface is like the album and then the fonts are like the songs. So they're all a family, but then the fonts are the different siblings within that family. They are sometimes also called a font family, especially within web development. I'm pretty sure the class is font family, not like typeface, but that's kind of the same. So the font family is Helvetica or whichever typeface, and then within that you'll have like the different variants of weight and size. So now that we know the difference between typefaces and fonts, there are also lots of different fonts. Each font will fit into some type of classification. These are basically like categories of fonts, and they just make it easier to distinguish the different types and different styles of fonts, and also so that when you're either making a font or you're designing with a font or a typeface, you can know the style that you are supposed to be using or the style that will be the best choice for you. The two main classifications that you probably will have already heard of or are the most kind of prevalent or popularly discussed is serif and sans serif. So serifs are like the little arms and legs or like extra little bits off the tops and bottoms or ends of letters. Serifs came from the past when we had older styles of printing and of like chiseling letters into marble and all those sorts of things, and they kind of developed as typography was developed. The first typefaces to be created were serif typefaces. From there we have developed to also create sans serif typefaces. So sans means without, so sans serif typefaces are typefaces that are without serifs. So you have serifs and sans serifs, and most fonts or typefaces will fit into one of these two categories or classifications. They either have serifs or they don't. So they can fit in there or they can fit in sans serif. Within serifs and sans serif classifications, there are also kind of sub-classifications. I won't go super in depth, but for example, for serifs, there are old style serifs, there are transitional serifs, and there are modern serifs, and then there are also slab serifs. Within sans serif, there are humanist sans serif typefaces, transitional sans serif typefaces, and geometric sans serif typefaces. As well as those classifications, there are some other fringe classifications as well. For example, there are script typefaces, so that's like handwriting, ones that look like handwriting. Monospace typefaces, so those are where every letter takes up the exact same amount of space. It's often used in like coding. There's calligraphic, so that's obviously like calligraphy. Black letter, which is like old school calligraphy. which is quite like Gothic if you think of Gothic fonts. There's also pixel typefaces, so that's like where the typeface is made of little squares. And then there are other decorative typefaces, so that might be ones that look kind of 3D, or people have made like scratchy ones. And so these are great classifications so that you can find the typefaces you're looking for, you can create the right kind of typefaces, you can use the right ones, and they're also really good for organizing your typefaces. So if you are downloading all of these typefaces and all of these fonts, you can categorize them so that when you go to use them, you can just look in the folder for sans serif typefaces. And so the reason why there are so many different classifications and so many different kinds of typefaces is that they all give a different mood or a different effect. So for example, sans serif typefaces are typically quite modern looking. They're very clean, very simple, and just very fitting for a lot of things today. Serif typefaces are often considered quite old-fashioned. They look kind of a bit older, they have an older vibe, but they are really easy to read in like more longer form bodies of text. Mono-spaced typefaces are going to give you that kind of technological vibe. Script ones feel a little bit more organic. They feel maybe more handwritten or personal. Black letter ones maybe feel a bit darker, a bit creepier, maybe a bit moody. The typeface you will use really affects the mood you're trying to create, what you're trying to say, how you're trying to make people feel, and maybe what you're trying to remind them of. So the typeface that you choose is really important to the work that you're creating. There is also one other classification or distinction between typefaces that is quite important to know. Many typefaces will have two different fonts or font sets depending on whether it's for display size or it's for text size. So that means is it going to be used for big headings or is it just going to be used for body copy? And they will have two different versions of their typeface depending on that usage. So for example, San Francisco, which is the typeface that Apple now uses for all of their operating systems, they have a display typeface and they also have a text typeface. They will use a slightly different version of the typeface depending on whether it's going to be used large scale or smaller scale, because they want to alter it so that it's easier to read in both situations. And often having it bigger means you can add more detail and kind of make it a little bit more intricate, whereas having it smaller, you really want to simplify it down and just make it easy to read. So that's another distinction that you might need to make, or you might need to find if you are choosing a typeface. You want to use the right one for the right thing at the right time. So just to summarize what we've talked about today, there's a difference between typefaces and fonts. Fonts make up a typeface, kind of like songs on an album. There are some distinctions and classifications between different typefaces, so that might be serif and sans serif, or it might be the different stylistic classifications. And there is also a distinction between display typefaces and text typefaces depending on where it's going to be used. So I hope that has given you a bit of an introduction into typefaces and fonts. Next week we will be looking at the anatomy of type, so we'll be going into the letters specifically and having a look at all the different types of all the different parts of the letters, like the serifs, which we talked about today, and some fun other ones that we can have a look at together. Please subscribe if you want to take a look at that. That will be up on this channel in 2 weeks time. These videos are coming out every fortnight, so please subscribe so you don't miss out. Also, please like this video if you've enjoyed it and if you've learned something, and if there's anything about typography that you want to learn, please leave it in the comments below. I would love to know what you want to learn so that I can tailor these videos to educate you in the best ways possible. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you've enjoyed it and I hope it has taught you something. I also, as always, hope that you are being creative and productive, and I'll see you guys next time with another video. Bye!